Morning grade 7s and welcome back to WorksheetCloud. I have been pondering over a quote that I'd like to share with you, and it's by Viktor Frankl. And he says here, everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. And as I think about the lockdown, I think how we have lost quite a bit of freedom in terms of going out and getting those takeaways and just going to the shops or to the movies. But there's one thing that the lockdown can't take away from us, and that is our attitude within the lockdown. And so I really encourage you to focus on your attitude in the circumstances. It's a good day to have a great day. And that doesn't come just by, faking it and going, oh, I'm so excited, I'm so happy. Read things, ponder over good things. The more negativity you read, the more negativity is going to come out. So what you put in is what comes out. So try and focus, read inspirational things. If you pray, I do that. Find something that keeps your attitude on a high. And obviously not every day is a good day, and we're allowed those. But as far as possible, don't let this lockdown steal your good attitude from you. And with that, let's jump into our lesson overview. So we're going to look at our daily starter, which we always start with. We're going to recap last lesson's comprehension strategies. We looked at creating a visual, we looked at making a connection, and questioning techniques. And then today we're going to look at determining importance. So take a look at this picture. I want you to think of a caption. And a caption is something like, if you read the newspaper, there'll be a caption under a photograph. It could be a headline with a picture. It could be like we're experiencing at the moment, maybe a picture of somebody and then coronavirus. So what would you do with this picture? I'd like you to be as creative as possible. So pause the video and then we'll come back when you're finished. Right, so obviously I'd love to be in a classroom where we could just hear all the different ideas, but I do hope that you were creative, that you're using some of the techniques that we've spoken about, your figurative language to make an impact, and your powerful vocab. Right, so let's jump into our revision. So last week we spoke about creating a visual. So as you're reading something, almost like a movie reel, what do you see? What are you hearing? What do you smell? What do you taste and what do you feel? And we obviously looked at the children of green know in the railway carriage and came up with quite a few different things. So if you haven't done the previous lesson, Comprehension Strategies Part 1, I would suggest that you stop the video and go back to that one first. So this was our first one, creating a visual. The second one was making a connection. And we looked at, as you're thinking about the paragraph that you've been given to read, or you're reading a book and you're having to make some assumptions, or you asked to give a review of it, how does that topic or information connect to what you already know about yourself? And we looked at, in terms of the children of green know and the railway track, being on a railway train, experiencing a flood with the rainy weather, being inside all alone, being among strangers. How does that connect to you? Have you ever experienced those things? And then we also looked at making a connection to something you've read. So whether you've read about floods or strange things happening around the world, how can you make a connection to what you're reading, to yourself, to what you've read, and to the world? And then our last lesson we looked at was asking questions. And to become a good reader, we said that you have to think and wonder about the story. So you've got to be an active participant in the process of what you're reading. So ask questions like the 5 W's and the H. Who, what, why, when, where, and how. And then you can ask specific questions. So I wonder why the author added this piece of information in, or what does this word mean? And in the paragraph we looked at, there was the word senseless. And why is it put there, and what does it mean in terms of senseless water? Quite a difficult concept to understand. What is going to happen next? Why did the character do that? Why did the writer put this in? And so just some of those techniques to use as you're reading something. And today we go on to determining importance. So sometimes when you're reading something, and sometimes if it's a very long passage or it's a book, not everything is important. Some things are lovely to be added in, but they're not important. So you need to be looking for the main ideas, the most important information. And one thing to do there is looking at interesting versus essential. Some things are really interesting and they're nice to have, but they're not essential to your understanding of the story. Distinguish between fact and opinion. Sometimes we look at what somebody is saying, and that's their personal opinion. For example, I think sushi is the best meal on the planet. A lot of you would be going, while some of you are like, I agree, Mrs. Fauché. Well, that's just my opinion. So looking at the difference between what is a fact and an opinion. So another one, for example, is parents need to give their children more pocket money. That is an opinion. It's not a fact, although you'd love it to be one. A fact would be something like, it can be proven. So something like oranges contain vitamin C. It can be proven that oranges do contain vitamin C. It's not just my opinion or something I think. And then distinguishing between problems and solutions. And then finding answers to specific questions and even summarizing all of that in your head. Now, it sounds like a lot, but the more you do this and the more you expose yourself to, as you are reading your text, try and put that strategy into practice. The better you will get at your reading and the better you'll be able to answer those comprehension questions that the teachers are setting for you. But it's not just about that. It's not just about taking in all this information and then just vomiting it out. Use these techniques as you go through your life, because just even being able to understand something and infer something is not just about being at school. It really isn't. So let's jump into specifics. So when we're determining the importance, some of the questions that you can ask is, what's the problem? What's the solution? What events have led up to the problem being solved? Did any of the characters change over the time that you read? And then summarize the most important points. So let's look at how to go about that. So let's first try something to find the importance of something. So some things are essential and some things are just interesting. So look at going to a baseball game. Which 3 items, if you were in America and you were so excited to go to a baseball game, what 3 items are the most important about being at that baseball game? So I want you to just pause the video, think about it a little bit, and then just pick 3. Right, I hope you did it. Let's take a look. So the first one for me would be a mitt. You can't watch a baseball game or go there and sit without somebody having a mitt. They also need a bat, and they obviously need the ball. Yes, we would prefer that somebody wears a shirt as they're playing the baseball game, and a hat is lovely, the cap for the sun, and obviously the popcorn is a nice treat. But the most essential things in order for a baseball game to happen or for you to go and watch one is those 3 things. The other things are really just extra additional information, but they're not essential for the game. Right, so I want you to try that in practice. So look at whether it's school, camping, making a dessert, or shopping. Which 3 things are most important, they're essential, and there's other stuff that would just be interesting. So try and just take your pen and paper, just write school, the 3 things, camping, the 3 things, and when we come back, we'll go through it together. And let's see how you've done. So obviously school bag, pen, books, lunch, iPad, money. Seems like we need all of them. Which ones are the most essential? Yes, definitely you need a pen because you're not going to be able to write anything down. You do need books in which to write down. And if it depends if you're at a school where you're using an iPad, but an iPad would be the next, to me, essential if you're at a school with iPads where you have to use your iPad every single day, which the children that I teach in grade 6 need their iPads every day. But if that's not the case, that would be an extra interesting one. So a school bag, pen, and books would be the most important. Lunch, yes, would it be nice, but you don't need lunch in terms of doing the work that you need to do. Yes, I know there would be a debate about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If your stomach's not full, you're not going to be able to concentrate. But I'm really talking about if you've had breakfast and you've gotten to school, lunch is an interesting extra, which would be nice. And obviously money to spend at the tuck shop. Camping, let's take a look at camping. Matches, a tent, book, sleeping bag, snacks, and a frisbee. So yes, having matches, probably quite an important thing, especially if you want to create a fire to cook on. A tent, yes, you don't want to sleep out just under the stars. A book would be nice. It would be interesting to have in case you get bored so you can read. Definitely need a sleeping bag because, yes, you could sleep in the tent, but you also need something in which to sleep. Snacks would be interesting and extra, and obviously a frisbee would be great to play a game if you bored. So the most essentials there would be matches, the tent, and the sleeping bag. Let's look at making a dessert. Sprinkles, ice cream, chocolate sauce, bowl, ice cream. It's meant to be scoop, not coop, and cherry. So which are the most important or essentials, and other stuff is extra. So if we look straight away, I could immediately pull out sprinkles are extra. That would be nice and interesting. Okay, a cherry would also be a nice extra on top. They always say the cherry goes on top, so it's like the last little thing that you add to it. So those two would be extra, and possibly chocolate sauce is your extra. But if you're going to make a dessert with ice cream, you're going to need ice cream, you're going to need a bowl, and you're going to need a scoop. And then shopping, if you were going to shop, shopping list, wallet, trolley, bags, pen, handbag. Okay, so which of those is essential? You cannot go without it. And I'm talking about going for like a big shop, like going to do your groceries. Well, you definitely need a trolley because you can't walk around the shops. And I've done that before. I think, I'm just going to go get 5 things. And then I start ending up carrying 6 or 7 and have to go back for a trolley or a basket. So definitely need your trolley. You definitely need your wallet because how are you going to pay for your groceries unless you need that? Right, do you need your handbag? I'm talking about if you, it's mom. No, because if is carrying her wallet or her purse, you can just carry it on her own. She needs a trolley. Pen? Not really. And the shopping list, yeah, it would be nice so that you don't do what I do and carry 6 things and then end up going to get a trolley to get 50 things, but you don't really need it. So your basic ones are your trolley, your wallet, and bags in which to put the shopping that you've bought. So there we go. I hope that you found that helpful in terms of determining what's essential and just what's interesting or nice to know. Now we take a look at 2 different things. So when you're determining the importance, there's a different way of determining importance when you're looking at fiction as opposed to looking at nonfiction. So when we're talking about fiction, we're talking about made up things. So we're talking about books and novels that have a plot and a setting and characters that are created from the imagination and that draw you in. And they follow a certain type of structure. So at the beginning, you start with a book, you sort of get to know and meet the characters and learn about the setting where the book is taking place. You then have the rising action in terms of reading about the main events that are happening that's sort of leading up to this problem. You have the climax or the very top of the story where you find out there's a major problem and how things are happening and it's quite, you're on the edge of your seat. And then there's a falling action where we start finding out that the problem, we're able to solve it. And then you obviously get to the very end where you conclude, and whether it's a happy or a sad ending, the problem is somehow solved. And then we've got nonfiction, which is to do with factual stories that focus on actual events and people. It's also sometimes called an informational text. And so it can be quite sequential. So it follows a sequence. There's cause and effect. There's comparing and contrasting sometimes in it, as well as a problem and a solution. So obviously, as we look, we're going to look specifically at nonfiction and how to determine the importance, because that's an easier one to look at to start. Right, so we're going to take a look at this nonfiction text, and we're going to look at wild, wild weather. So I'm just going to read it through with you. It's raining, it's pouring, the old man is snoring. Have you ever heard that song? It is a famous tune about the weather. Weather is something that affects all of us daily. Extreme weather is something that affects most people only a few times in their lives. Extreme weather includes flooding, rain, tornadoes, blizzards, and hurricanes. People study weather so that they can inform us. These are the people who give us the information we need so that we can remain safe in case of extreme weather. And then on the side here, just to stop, there's a picture of a tornado, and it's the caption, usually a tornado is in the form of a funnel shape. Sometimes it looks like a rope. Tornadoes. A tornado is a storm that can cause destruction in its path. Winds can reach up to 300 miles per hour. If you're in South Africa, we use kilometers 482.8 kilometers per hour. Tornadoes form from thunderstorms. They are most common in an area of the United States called Tornado Valley. This area is where many tornadoes form because of the way the air moves. And then there's a map there just to show us Tornado Valley and which states are affected. Cool, dry air from the north and warm, moist air from the south meet. This causes thunderstorms, which can become quite severe. When the atmosphere is not stable, the winds can increase and produce a tornado. Right, the next part of the informational text. Water spouts. A water spout is a weak tornado. It forms over water. It can happen on the ocean. It can happen on smaller bodies of water, such as lakes. Water spouts are most common in the Gulf of Mexico. They have occurred in the tropics as well. Water spouts can pick up things such as animals or tree limbs and drop them in other places. If a water spout moves onto land, it becomes a tornado and can cause damage. Wild weather comes in many forms. Tornadoes and water spouts are directly related and look alike. Both weather events require attention because they can be dangerous to humans and animals. Wild weather is fascinating and it is completely unpredictable sometimes. And then if we take a look at this picture over here, tornado funnel, cumulonimbus cloud, and spiral updraft, funnel cloud, debris cloud. So that's how the debris is sucked up into this funnel and it spirals up and then is deposited elsewhere. So it just shows us a little bit more about the spiral flow. So now if we go back, I'm just going to go back to the first page. When you are reading and determining importance, you need to ask yourself some questions. So what is important? Write it down or have it in your head. But you also need to ask the question why. Why is it important that I know that? So what I want you to do is just on this first page, I want you to pause the video. I want you to do 2 columns on your piece of paper. What is important? And tell me why it's important. So if, for instance, you say, it's raining, it's pouring, the old man is snoring, you tell me that's important. Why? It's just a song. So as you answer the why, you go, oh, that's actually interesting. It's not essential. It's not important. It's interesting to know that there's a song. It's raining, it's pouring, the old man is snoring. But it's not important to the understanding of tornadoes. So do you see why I'm saying write a column that says what is important? And then if you answer why and you go, that's not really important, you can cross off that song or that part of the story. So pause and then we'll go through it together. Right. If you've done that, that's great. I want you to go to the next part of the text, wild weather, and look at this part on water spouts. Again, write down what is important, what you think is important, and then next tell me why. And then as you tell yourself why, you'll see whether it's important or not. And then we'll go through it together. Okay, let's see how you've done. So these are the things that I wrote down were important. So what have you learned and what does the author want me to learn? Extreme weather includes floods, tornadoes, blizzards, and hurricanes. Why is this important? It gives us examples. So we need to know what kind of weather is wild. So I said that is important because it gives you examples of different kinds or types. The second one, tornadoes form from thunderstorms. Is this important? Yes, it tells us where they come from. Okay, so they come from thunderstorms. Tornadoes, are a funnel shaped like rope. Is that important? Yes, it tells me how to identify them, what they look like. Common in the US, in Tornado Valley. Yes, it tells me where. So do you see it's answering these questions? Where, how, where? Cool, dry air from the north plus moist, warm air in the south creates a thunderstorm. Yes, it tells us how they are formed. If they're coming from thunderstorms, we need to know how thunderstorms are created. So that's a good one. Water spout, okay, is a weak tornado and it is normally over water. So yes, it tells us that what types of tornadoes you get, and that one's quite a weak one, and it starts initially on water. And then water spouts, tornadoes can cause damage. Yes, we don't need to specifically know what kind of damage. It's interesting to know that it can suck up animals and parts of trees and deposit them somewhere else. That's interesting, but the fact is that they cause quite a lot of damage. So if I had to give you some questions based on this information that you've determined. You might have some questions like this. What information does the map show? You would have had some knowledge of it as you wrote down your what is important and why. Extreme weather includes floods, tornadoes, blizzards, and hurricanes. It specifically actually shows you the tornado valley. So it's more really not, as in my answer here, but more about the specific place. What does the diagram show? That was the diagram that showed it like a rope. It shows the kind of shape they're in. What information can you gather from the caption below the picture? And that was the one about the tornadoes forming from thunderstorms. So all that information is giving you stuff in which to answer the questions. Can you compare and contrast tornadoes and waterspouts? You can. We know that they form from the dry air and the moist warm air. We've got some other things about where they're common in. The one was the Gulf of Mexico. The tornadoes were in Tornado Valley. And then, sorry, I can see I'm covering a bit of that. Your waterspout is a weak tornado over water, whereas your tornado is actually on land, and then they cause damage. So all this information that you connected, what was important and why, will help you in answering any questions or most of the questions that you have. Obviously, there's going to be some questions that you need to infer, and that's one of the strategies we're going to learn in our next lesson. Right. Then if we take a look at fiction, so that's your stories with your characters and that require your imagination. There's other ways in which you can try and summarize or try and find the most important things in your mind. And obviously there we just looked at the structure of it, but you can use this kind of summarizing technique. Someone wanted but so then, and I'm thinking of doing that in a lesson so you can actually practically see how it's done. So someone wanted but so then. So who's the someone? Must be the character, the main character. What did they want or need? But what happened? So what is that climax, that problem? Then how do they start solving it as you come back down? And then how does the story end is your solution. You can also use a hand to try and remember. So if you just try and picture this in your mind, who are the characters? Where and when does this take place? There's your tallest finger. Hopefully, well, not hopefully, sometimes we do have shorter fingers, but the middle one, what's the problem? And then what events happen in which to solve the story or whatever was happening, that kind of problem and that climax in the story. So that's one way in which you can also summarize a fiction piece of writing that you are reading. So next time we're going to look at your inference. So we're going to look at I often get children saying, I don't know, Mrs. Faucher, it doesn't tell me in the story. That's exactly where inference comes into play. And we'll look at these two pictures to just help you a little bit more. And then we're also going to look at synthesizing, which means just like those people coming together with the puzzle pieces to bringing it all together, we're going to look at what synth means in terms of your prefix. So there we bring in that a little bit. But ultimately, it's about the strategy of synthesizing when you are reading something. So I do hope that this has been helpful, grade 7s. We've looked at so far is creating a visual, like a movie in your mind. We've looked at making connections between yourself and something you've read or something you've seen in the world. We look at questionings, your 5 W's and an H, what, where, who, why, when, and how. And then today we've looked at understanding the importance. Some things are interesting to know, but they're not essential. And sometimes you need to tell the difference when you are reading something. And so remember, there's an activity for you to do at the end of this video, and obviously email any questions to me at grade7@worksheetcloud.com. And so thanks for watching. I will see you again tomorrow for part 3, same time, same place. Bye, grade 7s.